The pill bottle hit the floor with a hollow clatter, bouncing once before rolling beneath the refrigerator. A few white tablets scattered across the linoleum like tiny, helpless teeth. My knees bent with the slow stiffness I'd grown used to. I studied myself on the counter as I lowered down to gather what was mine, not just the pills but my breath, my thoughts, my silence. Blee's voice still rang in my ears, venom laced in every word. "We're not a charity move-out." I didn't answer. My fingers trembled not from fear, but from the ache in my shoulder where arthritis had taken up residence, like an old tenant. My daughter stood across the room, arms folded, like I was a nuisance. She couldn't wait to be gone. Her husband, Cormac, leaned against the doorframe, sipping coffee I had brewed in the mug I had bought in the kitchen my name had helped pay for. No one moved to help me. No one flinched. I saw their expressions, indifferent, impatient. I used to feed Blue oatmeal right at this table. I used to brush her hair and press cool cloths to her forehead when fever came for her in the night. I used to whisper stories and braid hope into every goodbye before school. I picked up each pill in silence. One rolled under the fridge and I left it. It didn't seem worth crawling on my stomach for. Not anymore. They thought I'd cry or argue or beg. I'd done all those things before in smaller ways. Apologies over cold dinners, excuses made for missed thank yous, quiet endurance of comments that weren't quite cruel but never kind. But now the silence inside me wasn't submission. It was recognition, a flicker of something sharp returning. I hadn't lost myself. I'd simply been waiting. When I finally stood up, I met Blythe's gaze. She didn't look away. She didn't have to. She thought she had already won, that I had nowhere else to go, that I had nothing left but the crumbs of my presence and a room near the laundry. I capped the bottle, placed it on the counter, and walked to the sink to wash my hands. The water ran warm. I dried them slowly. Behind me, neither of them spoke, but my mind was already moving. I remembered exactly where the deed was. After Henry died, the house turned into a mausoleum. Every creak in the floorboards was his laugh, every silence his absence. I lasted 6 months before packing up the guest linens and driving south to Blythe's. She had just had Declan, and though she didn't say the words, I could hear the weariness in her voice. "We're barely making it," she said. "Cormac's job keeps shifting hours. Daycare's a mess. I don't know how we're going to keep up." I told her I'd help. When they found this house too big for their credit score, too small for their pride, I offered to co-sign. It wasn't a question. The bank needed someone stable, someone responsible, someone like me. My name went on the mortgage, and by default the deed. I remember the notary saying, "Congratulations, Miss Winslow." I smiled, not because I needed a house, but because I thought I was giving my family a future. I used what was left of my pension to cover the down payment. I paid the first year of homeowner's insurance, helped tear up the stained carpet, and lay new flooring. When the HVAC broke the following summer, I cut a check. Same when the roof leaked after a bad storm. It didn't feel like sacrifice, not then. It felt like love, like continuity. I told myself it was an investment in something bigger than comfort. Legacy, maybe. I told myself I was securing a home where I could be both useful and surrounded. But little by little, the tone shifted. My help became invisible. My name on the documents blurred into something they conveniently forgot. I was told I got to live here like it was a favor, as if the roof hadn't cost me my savings, as if the walls weren't ones I helped insulate while Blee was still nursing Declan in the other room. Now every dollar I gave feels like a receipt they're trying to tear up. The last renovation I paid for was the new water heater. That was 6 months ago. Blee didn't thank me. She only said it was long overdue. I remember thinking, so was my exit. It was almost midnight when I heard it, my name not spoken but implied. I was folding towels at the edge of the hallway near the half-shut door to the living room. Blee's voice was low, careless in its cruelty. "She's like a ghost," she said. "Always there, just hovering," Cormac chuckled. "She's not even paying rent." My hands froze on the towel. I waited for the correction, the reminder, the truth. It never came. "She's lived long enough," Blee went on, her voice flat. "At some point, it's just taking up space." They laughed then, easy, familiar. The kind of laughter you hear between people who agree. I stood there with the laundry basket pressed against my hip, feeling smaller than I ever had in my life. And I had known small. I had cleaned strangers' blood off ER floors, bathed patients who forgot their own names. I had stood by my husband's hospital bed when the chemo stopped working, and he couldn't remember our anniversary. but nothing made me feel as diminished as hearing my daughter wish I would vanish. That morning, my medication hadn't been refilled again. Blythe said she forgot. The pharmacy said the pickup had been scheduled days earlier. The box sat unopened on the kitchen counter when I found it. The room they gave me had once been for holiday storage. Now it was mine, shared with the scent of detergent, the hum of the water heater, and the soft whimper of the dog in the crate next to my bed. I stopped putting my pills in the bathroom cabinet. I carried them in my pocket. That night, after they went quiet, I sat on the edge of my cot and opened an old composition book I found tucked behind the dresser. I began writing dates, receipts, quotes, things said behind doors, things they thought I hadn't heard. I didn't know yet what I'd use it for, but I knew I needed to remember because they were slowly rewriting me out of my own life, and I had no intention of disappearing. The morning it happened, the house was quiet. The light through the basement window was still gray, slanting in like hesitation. I rose slowly, already knowing something wasn't right. My chest tightened before I reached the stairs, and my fingers tingled as I gripped the railing. I made it to the kitchen, dizzy, breath shallow, the way it feels when you've missed too many doses. The pill bottle had been empty for 2 days. I'd reminded Blythe. She nodded, said she'd get the refill. She didn't. I knocked on their door. Nothing. Knocked again harder. The door cracked open just enough for her face to appear. Barely lit. Already annoyed. "I need my meds," I said, voice raw. "It's 6:30, she sighed, rubbing her eyes. "You're being dramatic again." Then the door shut. I turned, walked maybe 2 steps, and the floor tilted. My knees buckled. The tile rushed up to meet me. I don't remember falling, just the cold against my cheek, the sound of the dog barking, and Declan crying somewhere upstairs. A few minutes later, Cormac came down yawning. He stepped over me like I was a grocery bag, grabbed juice, popped the cap, drank. "She'll get over it," he said, not even looking back. I lay there for 10 minutes, maybe longer. When I could, I pulled myself upright, one hand braced against the cabinet. No one came. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the cot. My hands were trembling, but not from the fall, from clarity. I pulled open the bottom drawer and reached behind the loose panel I'd wedged years ago. Inside was the folder I never meant to use. The deed, mortgage records, bank transfers, and every repair invoice I'd paid. My name alone. They thought they held the keys. They didn't even know where the locks were. I ran my hand over the paper, slow and certain, the way I used to smooth Declan's blankets when he was still small enough to be swaddled. And then I got up, found my notebook, and began listing the facts item by item. The library was quiet, peaceful, in a way my own home hadn't been in years. I signed in at the desk, took a seat near the back, and pulled the folder from my tote. I hadn't opened it in public before. Something about doing it here, surrounded by books and silence, felt fitting. I looked up the number for Morrison Kane Law, the same office that handled Henry's will all those years ago. I didn't know if Roger Morrison still worked there, but the name was still on the website. I dialed. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Morrison Kane Law." I cleared my throat. "This is Leah Winslow. My husband was James Winslow. You handled his estate." A pause. Then a warmth crept into his voice. "Mrs. Winslow." "Yes, I remember. I still have your file. I need to ask you something about my home." He listened while I explained about the mortgage, the deed, the renovations, and the family who no longer saw me. His tone changed as I spoke, becoming quieter, steadier. "Email me everything," he said. "Scans of the deed, payment records, anything you have." I used the scanner app right there at the table. Each file uploaded felt like a step toward air. He called later that afternoon. "Leah," he said, gentle but firm. "It's exactly as you remember. Your name is the only one on the deed. There's no co-owner, no tenancy agreement, no lease. Your daughter and her family, legally, they're guests. You're within your rights to ask them to leave." I exhaled so deeply it felt like I'd been holding my breath for years. "I can prepare a formal notice to vacate," he said. 30 days, unless you want it sooner." "I'll think on it," I replied. That night I didn't cry. I baked banana bread instead. The next morning I set the table, napkins folded, mugs warm, just like I used to. Then I opened my laptop and printed the notice, my name, their deadline. I signed it slowly with a hand that didn't shake and folded it into the envelope I would leave beside their breakfast. I woke before the alarm, though I'd set it out of habit. The house was still safe for the faint tick of the thermostat and the quiet breath of the dog asleep in his crate. I dressed in the dark, my softest shoes and a sweater. Henry once said it made me look like sunrise. In the kitchen, I poured 3 mugs of coffee, just like I had every Sunday for years. Blight's mug had a chipped handle. Cormac's had a fishing logo. Mine said, Nana's Kitchen, a gift from Declan. Before they stopped letting him pick presents, the banana bread sat in the center of the table, warm and golden. I didn't expect them to notice the difference in texture or the extra cinnamon. I only hoped they'd notice it was the last one. I reached into my bag and pulled out the thick envelope. Deed, receipts, formal eviction notice printed on crisp white paper. On top, I placed a note in my best penmanship. Thank you for finally showing me who you are. I stood there for a minute, not to second guess, just to remember. The quiet wasn't hollow. It was clean, clear. At the door, I turned back for one last glance at the place I thought might be a haven. It had become something else, a reminder of what I could endure. And now, what I would no longer allow. I stepped outside. The air was cool, not biting. A breeze moved through the trees along the sidewalk like a whisper I didn't need to hear to understand. My suitcase rattled gently behind me as I walked to the bus stop 2 blocks away. No one followed. No one called my name. Mean was waiting on her porch, still in her lavender robe, arms wide. She had steeped the tea already. She knew the hour I would arrive. We didn't speak right away. We didn't need to. We sat, cups in hand, the steam rising between us. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost. I felt like a woman returning to herself. I imagined Blee coming downstairs, still groggy, expecting her coffee just the way she liked it, burnt and bitter. The scent of banana bread still clung faintly to the air. She probably thought I was out for a walk or folding laundry. She would have sat down, reached for her mug, then noticed the envelope. I can see her hands trembling, not from sadness, but disbelief. She never thought I'd go. She certainly never thought I'd take the house with me. The note was short, deliberate, my name signed with care. I imagined the moment her eyes landed on the eviction notice beneath it, her breath catching like a lie stuck in her throat. She called me 4 times that morning. I let each ring dissolve into silence. Cormac's called next, voice tight in the voicemail. You can't do this. We've built a life here. The same life I funded. He didn't say that part. By noon, they had found a lawyer, a young man, likely too polite to say what they didn't want to hear. You're not on the deed, he told them. She's the legal owner. She doesn't even need to give you 30 days. This is a courtesy. They didn't take it well. I know them. The neighbors began to notice by the second day. No curtains pulled back. No familiar humming from the back porch. No banana bread cooling on the windowsill. Mr. Drummond from next door asked where I'd gone. Blee said something clipped, the kind of answer that invites more questions. Declan asked too. Where's Nana Blay? I said, I went on a trip. He said, she didn't even say goodbye. By the end of the week, the house had turned cold, not from weather, but from absence. From the sound of a chair that used to scrape against the kitchen tile each morning, and no longer does. She stood in her remodeled kitchen, hands flat on the counter I paid for, and finally looked around, not at what was left, but at what had been taken. The sheriff pinned the notice to the front door with a neat strip of blue tape. 30 days, no extensions, no appeals. The language was polite, professional, but final. They tried, of course. Blue sent messages that swung from pitiful to livid within a single scroll. We're family, she wrote. Then, you've lost your mind. Then, how could you do this to us? I read none of them twice. Cormac called the lawyer again, hoping there had been some mistake. There wasn't. I'd been careful. Every document, every timestamp, every receipt. The law didn't care if I was old or inconvenient. It cared about the paper. The bank account they thought I would refill sat untouched. Their savings were nearly gone, spent on countertops, cruises, and a car too new for their means. Their credit was no better. Every rental they applied for turned them down. No one wanted tenants being evicted under legal order. They packed boxes slowly, not with care, but with resignation. The boxes weren't labeled, just filled, thrown together like they didn't expect to land anywhere soft. I heard from Mean's neighbor that Declan cried when they took the rocking chair from the corner of his room. The one I used to sit in when he had fevers. He clutched the little stuffed rabbit I once mended after he tore it at the park. Cormac said nothing for a while. Then one evening, While Bull sat at the table staring at a bill they couldn't pay, he said we should have just treated her better. It didn't change anything. I didn't watch them leave. I didn't need to. The house would remember for me. The corners I painted, the curtains I hung, the warmth they took for granted until it slipped between their fingers. They moved out 2 days before the deadline, heads low, backs bent. I imagined the silence in that house as the door closed behind them, not angry, not vengeful, just empty, waiting for someone who wouldn't return. I didn't sell the house right away. I let it breathe first, let it settle without their noise filling the rooms. I walked through each space one last time, touching the walls. I helped paint the doorframe, where I had once measured Declan's height in pencil marks they never bothered to erase. I wasn't angry, I was clear. The buyers came quickly. Developers wanted it, most flashing big checks and bigger promises. But I didn't want the house leveled into condos. I wanted someone to love it the way I once had. Her name was Maribel, a postal worker, single mom, 2 boys. She'd lived across the street for years, always staring at the porch with longing when she came home late from her shift. I never thought I'd be able to afford it, she said, running her hand along the stair rail. Not this house. I gave her a price she could manage. Fair, not inflated. When we signed the papers, she cried, the kind of tears I used to hide in the laundry room when the air got too thin. You'll take care of it, I said. She nodded, holding the keys like they were sacred. Weeks later, Blee came back. She stood on that porch, her porch, she must have thought, with a brown paper bag in one hand and desperation in her eyes. Maribel opened the door. I want to speak to my mother, Blee said. I want to buy the house back. I can pay more than you did. Maribel tilted her head, her voice calm and even. You lost it the moment you forgot who she was. She closed the door. I didn't hear it from Maribel. I heard it from the neighbor who watched the whole thing unfold from his garden. Now I spend Thursday afternoons at the Women's Center downtown, helping women sort through deeds, titles, and fine print. I tell them what no one told me. Keep the deed in your name. Keep your own account. Keep your power. Some call me Grandma Justice. I laugh, but I keep showing up because every time I do, I rewrite the ending for someone else. My new kitchen is small, but it fits me. The sunlight hits the counter around 8 each morning, warming the tile under my bare feet. The kettle whistles like it's happy to be used. I keep the spice rack organized, the window open, and the cookie jar full, not because anyone expects it, but because I like it that way. I planted tomatoes along the back fence, just 2 rows, but they're coming in steady. I talk to them sometimes while I water. Not out loud at first, but lately I found myself saying full sentences. You're doing just fine. Keep reaching. It's strange how quiet can feel like company when no one's watching you survive. I started writing letters again, this time not to anyone, just to myself. Little notes I fold and keep in a box by the pantry. One says, you didn't disappear. You got free. Blee still texts me once a week, sometimes twice. I'm sorry. Can we talk? Then Declan misses you. Then silence. Then again, please. I don't respond. Not from anger, not even grief, just clarity. There's a difference between forgiveness and forgetting. I forgave her the moment I walked out that door. But forgetting would mean erasing what she taught me about myself, about what I won't allow again. Sometimes I sit with my tea and say things out loud just to hear them in my own voice. The other day, while watering the mint, I looked out at the rows of green and whispered, I wasn't a burden. I was the foundation. And when I left, the whole house fell. Not because I wanted it to, but because they never realized who was holding it up. Now the roof above my head belongs to no one but me. The air doesn't carry bitterness. The mornings don't require armor. And somewhere out there, my daughter sits in a kitchen built with my sacrifices, wondering when exactly I became the woman who wouldn't come back. But I already did come back.